Alright, FM 4-00141, Chapter 6, Yard Terminal Operations. Testing, testing, testing. Alright, FM 4014-01.41, Chapter 6, U.S. Army Railroad Operations or Rail Operations. All right. Railway cars spend over half their life of their use of the in-life yards or terminals. A major proportion of battle personnel equipment that are involved with the yard terminal operations. Efficient yards and terminal operations are required of the railway battalion to exploit in its maximum capabilities. Rail yards. A rail yard is a system track of the defined and limited to the use of making up, breaking up trains, storing, and all allied purposes. Movements not authorized in timetable or the train order may be made over these tracks. Yards may be located at railheads, depots, interchanging ports or terminals. Yards may also contain a number of the tracks. The number of the length of the inbound outbound train determines the number of the length of the tracks. Railway yards are natural bottlenecks in the movement of the train from one geographical area to another. In theory, the cars are entering the receiving end of the yard as fast as they arrive. However, in the particular that they can only depart as fast as the yard personnel can inspect, repair, classify, and switch and double them according to the set-off order. Depending on the density of the traffic, the number of the railroad's geographical locations, a yard may be one of two types of progressive or combination. Each of these types have certain characteristic facilities to distinguish the determination of operation. A typical civilian yard is shown in Figure 5.6.1. 6.2. A progressive yard is located in the busy terminal tracking or running from east to west, and a progressive yard is subdivided in receiving classification departure yards and cars moving through the ends of the subyard in progressive manner. Receiving yard. The purpose of a receiving yard of the tracks and a clear train promptly and on revival, the preventing of the main line congestion. As train approaches the terminal, enters the yard and leads the track, clears the main line, and so that the track is not tied up. The road locomotive is uncoupled and goes to the engine house for inspection and repair. At this point, the train loses its identity and becomes the draft of the car. The yard car collects its freight way bills and makes a track to check which the switch list is prepared on the track. A track check, he records the initial numbers and seat numbers, then counts the yards in order to then stand from front to near and shows whether the car is uploaded or empty. This right here is a picture of what is known as the whale's eye, a typical civilian yard, and this is the Santa Fe Southern Pacific Corporation. You got your local yards, your multiple hump, and your classification yards through an inspected yard and through a diesel locomotive facility in the receiving, or should I say, the receiving yard. After removing the locomotive, the car inspector is in place a blue safety flag and a marker at each end of the draft car. Makes through their inspection of each car. Inspection of the complete checks as following: brake system, rigging, journal boxes, including journal packaging and lubrication, wheels and axles, coupler, drafting gear, and underframe. General state of the car to the body is located. The car should start at the end of both of the draft cars and walk along each side of the making of the inspection. Some of the yards of the pit may be dug in beneath the traffic, while the pit inspector can observe the underside of the car, the wheel that tracks the defective cars, and found and then cannot be immediately repaired from the receiving order. Bad order repaired the defects noted and the attachment to the car. The car is then placed in the bad order track and waits movements to the repair tracks. When the inspector completes the work on the blue safety flag, the marker is removed. The draft car is ready for the switching of the classification yard. The classification yard is next in receiving yard. The classification yard is sorted and classified according to destination priority. The movement destination may be in the local depot, supply point to the branch and connecting line of the points of the farther upline, neighboring station, and local industry, or in the classification destination. The yard designates the number of the tracks in the classification yards to be used in the cars for each of the designation. In the larger the number of the cars, the particular station tracks may be designated from the station. For example, cars are blocked consecutively in particular stations. Tracks are designated by the station. For example, one are blocked consecutively in the draft. The first cars to be set in the route and directly behind the locomotive. This has prevented delays from the blocks and cars setting out along the line. Individual cars and groups of cars are switched to the various tracks according to the switching list and specifies the track and the number to each car. 6.6. When artificial hill is built in the classification, the entire yard is called the hump yard. In the hump, switching the switch engine pushes a draft of the cars receiving the yard up in the hill and hump. At the crest of the hump, the individual cutoff is permitted to roll through the gravity down the hump and designated classification track. The conductor and the brakeman position to the hump of the cutoff of the cars. Switch list is sequence as it goes over the crest. Control the car cars, either the handbrakes or operated brake rigging cars. Retarders controlled by the tower. Advantages of the hump switching is quick, efficient way to which cars are switched and classified minimum use of active power. Hump switching is much faster than the flat yard switching because the movement of the forward direction only does not involve the back and the forth movement of the locomotive. The entire train can be switched from one time train length limited to push over the power of the switching locomotive. However, the hump yards are expensive to build and are usually only used only in large progressive yards where there enough traffic is to justify the expense. 6-7 departure yard. Once a car is classified, the switches of the departure yard to be made in the trains. These cars are grouped in the front to the rear in order where they will be respective en route in order they will be switched in the easier to the next terminal. After the train is assembled, the trains consist of the repaired and sent yard office, cars inspected, departure terminal, air brake test, and another group general inspection. While they are checking the cars, the road engine crew switches the engine ready to the front end of the draft cars. The train conductor must get away bills, and the train consists of the yard office, and the train orders the clearance form A from the train order office. Train order gives the priority of the movement of the main line, and the clearance form A to give the exact time train authorized to occupy the main line. With his brake test completed, with the inspector satisfied with the equipment in good shape and ready to operate, marks the place of the rear of the last car draft and officially becomes the train man, or the train. The train may leave the yard of the chief dispatcher if the dispatcher gives the signal. A combination yard. Railway frequently incorporate receiving classification departure facilities into one yard. This may result in a sufficient volume of the work to justify 3 separate yards, or from the lack of the land to expand the yard layout. The combination of the yards of the number of the tracks depends on the volume of the traffic. The extended and established length of the inbound obtained to determine the routes of the track length. These yards are generally flat. The switch accomplished by the back and forth movement of the yard engine, which cuts cars. The method that prevails in most small yards. Yard switching is generally done in the combination. The combination yard is impossible, arbitrary assigning the specific tracks for receiving. Road trains must be taken into the yard without delay, preventing the block of the main track. The yard master decides the track of the use. However, it's crowded. The yard master may force the accept the train on the track as to be accommodated. It must be necessary to use the track if the clear tracks are too short. They accommodate the entire train. The length of the track shown in Figure A, Figure 6.2 are underused interchangeable inbound, outbounds, and remaining tracks to use of the classification. This is a typical combination yard with the main tracks, the main east yard tracks on the westbound running track, and the yard offices. A, B's, and C's. A, B, and C tracks 1 through 9 used in the inbound, outbound tracks. B as A. 10 through 17 used in the classification yard is short eastbound outboard located, and C, extension yard used switching and building up locals. Terminal facilities. 869. A railway terminal is a large installation beginning at the end of the rail line of delivering, receiving freight, and loading and unloading passengers. In a theater operation, military rail, and when generally having the terminal at the beginning of the line, other than forward or end of the line while in the end of the railroad head. Adequately terminal facilities vital importance to railway operation. Congestions can occur in the facility are not operated, and if they do not exist, the following can result in a congestion occurs. Cars cannot be moved. Cars cannot be properly unloaded or unloaded. Tactical forces may be deprived of urgently needed supplies. Service facility 610. Every railway terminal includes one or more types of yards discussed, and plus other installations which include inspection, repair track of the locomotive, ready tracks, fuel, sand, and water service facilities, as such as ash pits, scale tracks, or so forth, are building the terminal, including the following: signed houses, supplies which are located near the service tracks, shop buildings, repair tracks, yard, office, tower, is near the center of the yard of the control of the classification switching operations, other building of the providing the billet and mess facilities for the train crew. Consider the protection afforded by each of the following against the NBC attack, which was selecting each of the site, a certain type of the building, excellent shelter for the nuclear hazards required, the minimum time of the effort to adapt. The stronger the structure, the better the protection against the blast. The overpressure of the overpressure, such as the SPE, SCPE, can be used converted existing structures provided the rest of the relief of the new personnel and the NBC hazardous. The SCP is the field expedition system gas, in particular filter, moved to the NBC combination overpressure system stops leakage, contaminated air into the enclosure. Personnel enter, leaving the protective entrance. The entrance is the airlock, preventing the combination entering the enclosure. The field manual 3.4 provides information on other types of systems that they use. 611. Freight station and name buildings, sheds, warehouses. These stations provide the facilities, receipt, loading, and unloading, storage, equipment, and supplies, loading and unloading, and preferably have separable routes for vehicles to enter and depart. The end of the ramps provided with the wheel and track, while not available by the time that does not permit the construction of the end of the ramps of the vehicles and the tanks. May be loaded on flat cars, flat expeditions discussed shown in figure C4. TM 55 2200 00112. The name freight station consigns should be clearly shown and waybills, documentation, permit, and prompt placement of the freight cards, the yard operating procedures. Passenger stations. Facilities moving personnel over the railway should include one or more two of which cars can be placed before boarding time. The facilities allow the cars to be movement of the troops should be cleaned and inspected with water before being placed for loading. When the cars are equipped with a steam heater, they can be heated during cold water before the troops board or using a station line. Heater cars or locomotive space free or vehicular traffic should be available adjacent to loading the track. This will always allow the passengers to assemble according to the plan of the permit. Riddling, handling, baggaging, equipment station facilities shall include office space for field transportation officers, battalions, operating personnel, waiting rooms, and storage shields, car cleaning and watering tracks, and so forth. Engineering houses. Engine houses or roundhouses are quite vulnerable to air attack because they will usually adjacent to turnables as easily identified from the air. When engine houses are not available or not usable tactical reasons, track adjacent with the yards constructed with the set aside servicing locomotives. Some facilities should include fuel, water supplies as a pit inspection, minor underneath repairs as part of the cleaning fires. A steam locomotive is used and a wide track for turning locomotives in the absence of a turntable. New engine house construction should be simple rectangular functional shed-like facility. If necessary, should need the equipment tools in boxcar. Mobile workshop operating with a mobile machine shop car can be made to use outlining the points of no facility in new construction is not feasible is justified. Personnel of the transportation railway equipment maintenance company operating engine houses. Tracking yard characteristics. Expedite yard with a certain track necessary. They include the mainline track outside of the yard, divided leads, running tracks, switching leads, sufficient track and length, and so forth. Outside main tracks. When the main track of the outside of the yard of the tracks, time may be saved by switching cards. When a main track separates the main yard from the auxiliary yard, the crew is delayed in the crossing from one yard to another. Yardmasters have no control over the main tracks. The crews may obtain the dispatching permission before crossing the tracks. For example, a yard crew of 30-40 cars crossing a mainline track will interrupt an entire switching operation for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the mainline tracking. In an ideal arrangement to having the main tracks is located the kilometers of the yard with the yard of the track, main line of the low density have many restricted yards. The significantly one with the high density may deal with the yard's operation to extent and might advantages relocate the mainline trackage. Divided leads. Divided leads may be located at each end of the yard. They enable the two yards to work with at the same time while the signal lead exists where the two crews are employed. One crew must generally couple cars, make room on the tracks while others use the lead cars and switching tracks. Running tracks. Running tracks extend for the entire length of the yard and provide the route of the travel in any point of the yard, independent with the switching leads and classification. The two running tracks exist where they assign the directional designations. Most of the railway permit of the yard use the track of the prior position of the yard master. However, their movement must be directional specified with a track designator, with the exemption of the yard facility tracks running the general of those ones that used without permission. Long lead approaches. Switching leads provided with the access to a point with the yard. They must be long enough to handle the longest length of the cars normally handled. They must also lead out the yard to the running track on the main line. Long approaches of the switch leads desirable so that the yard can move the long cuts of the cars from one end to another. 619 track length. Tracks should be long enough to be handled inbound, outbound tracks with doubling the moving of the cars from one track to the coupling to the cars to another. For example, a 100-car train enters the yard of the track and only holds 65 cars. The train must double the 35 cars to another track and block the wild lead that's making the double. When an outbound train is built up to two or more tracks of its limited length, the delay will incur in doubling in the train. When the train is in one track, the air test, which may be made only after the train is complete, can be made before the train moves into the blocking lead. Pusher engines may also be used to help reduce and delay the pushing of the train from the yard. Other track and yard facilities. Railroad tracks are located in engine house or are used for moving locomotives waiting on the going road. When the locomotive is ready for the switch road or switch surfaces, it is moved readily to the track locomotive is needed. It is moved for the lead track from the front side of the assembled track. Facilities inspect the water, fuel, sand levels and located is alongside the ready track. Repair tracks are located in the receiving yard. They are used during the inspection of the repair crews and mechanical defects. Light and heavy repairs are made to the cars in large rail yards. Therefore, the built low, light and heavy repair traffic. The volume of the traffic is great, and the rebuilt the facilities may be required. In any small yard, this will always be a light repair tracks. Mechanically defective cars are switch trains and placed in bad order tracks, leading to the repairing tracks. And extensive are required to if extensive repairs are required to load or transfer tracks, or you transfer from the train defective cars to another car to prevent long delays. Imperishables are handled with the facilities of re-icing cars or servicing mechanical refrigerator cars are required. 622 inspection tracks are into the inspection locomotives and cars. The tracks may be equipped with a pit and floodlight so the inspector can examine the underframe of the cars and trucks and locomotives and running gear. Team tracks or spurs provided with a place of unloading. Railway cars must be accessible to motor vehicles. There are frequently new ramps to allow the easier loading and unloading of the vehicles of the flat cars from piggyback movement. Shippers provide their own vehicles of loading and unloading cars from these on the team tracks. 624 dangerous commodity of the tracks provided with the handling ammunition and explosive. The POL products of these tracks are isolated from the other tracks in the yard. Other tracks may be identified to liberate the decontamination of the locomotives and railway cars. 625 miscellaneous tracks, special tracks such as wreck train or work train equipment tracks or storage tracks for loaded and sand gravel rails and cross ties and other maintenance of way materials functionally located in the yard, readily accessible for the cars switched out of the place in the trains. The railway handles livestock perishable freights and must have the facilities feeding the watering, resting the livestock, and re-icing the refrigerator cars containing the perishable shipments. The engine house contains repair equipment, materials, and tools, inspecting services, more making running repairs of locomotives. They are operating the railway division of railway equipment. The company operates the engine house while inspecting services of the repairs and finish, and locomotives are ready for the road and services. Yard and personnel duties responsibility. The operation of a yard and rail terminals require a large number of workers assigned to the various duties. The following describe the duties of the yard master, yard clears, yard switch crews, and yard inspectors. The yard office workshop of the yard supervisor coordinates all yard clerical work. The yard is complete charge of all the workers, all activities in the yard, responsible for safely, speedily, economically switching inbound trains and building up and forward outbounding trains. This duty includes the distribution of the cars in a yard, assuming the tracks, and loading, unloading, and assigning with the switching crews and the calling of the train crews. The clerical yard and the operation also has a yard responsibility. The worker consists of the following: making track checks, notifying local consignees of the cars arriving them, maintaining record books, compiling train complying train. It consists sorting, distributing waybills, preparing other documentation necessary for dispatching from the yard of their destination. The yard master is also responsible for following the records and reports. 629. When planning with the switching of the train, the yard master considers the freight on hand. When the yard master reports for duty, he should check the lineup of the incoming trains and cars already in the yard. Should immediately begin to bank up the train to clear the yard of the inbound trains, and the check is made by the Yard Master Journal. The Yard Master Journal, sometimes called the turnover book, provides the information needed for the planning and switching making of the trains and end up the date of the permanent record maintained with each of the yard on each shift. It is used in the Yard Master status of every track of the yard, and in 6.3, the sample page of the journal may be in the combination of the yard. This right here is the sample of the Yard Master's Journal. It's got your tracks all the way on your from 1 through 17, your yard, how many tracks are in the situation, they're clear, whether they are ready for which switch and what conductor, the cars, the ETA, the engine, the inbound line, the time, the date, your tracks on your extension yards, your regular crews and the extra crews, and this is a sample page of the yard journal. The actual form of the vary among the railways. Information found in the journal is basically the same. The theater operation journals are simply the possibilities shown in essential information in addition with the name of the yard, master of the terminal on the yard name, the date and the time of the journal, and may show all the following. Consider the lineup of the inbound train is due to the next several hours. If there is no figure to the estimated time of the arrival, the dispatcher will estimate the arrival time later. Listing on every of the track, including the cars and the contents of the status of every track in the yard, include whether the cars are coupled, whether they are eastbound or westbound, whether each of the cars should shop traffic in space, unspaced, and appropriation notation in base is also made that there has been tested and okayed in any track, and is a list of the yard crews locomotives working during the oncoming shifts, exactly each car in the yard doing time yard changing, whether each engine is awaiting relief. Yardmaster usually changes shifts in half or a full hour before the yard route changes. A list consistently consists of trains ready for departure. Other data pertinent to the yard operation of the journal page is at the margin to allow the additional entries for the work progress. After 2,300 hours, all cars switches to the track from the west end of the yards will be entered on the right side. For the figure 6.4 shows a sample of the journal page. Will entries posted? The entries should be consulted with the checked and after switching operation is completed. This is an extension of the journal page with the tracks. Car Inspector Train Report DA Form 5616 R. Prepare the report of each train that has been inspected with the entries of leave in the yard terminal with the blank form DA Form 5616 R. The Appendix A we will produce on an 8.5-inch 11-inch paper indicating the train number, engine number, the station date of the time of the form, showing the date of the breakage pipe, the line time, and the air test of the proper blocks, indicating the percent of the brake pipe leakage of remarks blocks provided with the additional information. All other blocks and self-explanatory. Another car inspector's train report, the DA Form 5616. DA daily statement of cars on hand, DA Form 5617. The station agency yard clerks prepare the report using the information obtained from the car record book on the physical check of the cars on hand at the yard of the station sidings. The blank form DA Form 5617, and then the Appendix A, reproduce the 8.5-inch paper on blank paper, the forms of the car number, date of the receipt, type of the contents, consignee, the length of the reason for any delay, the report for the forward of the delay from the channel for the battalion commander, division superintendent for the information of his report of the higher authority. Yard clerks. Yard clerks prepare the train consists of the switch out list and other administrative jobs assigned by the yard master of the yard, make the yard checks, maintain exact up to the minute location of all the cars, check the numbers of all arriving departure. The number of the yards required depends on the type of the number of the volume of work to be done. These 3 checks are usually required of each of the shift. One of the check clerk handles the in-bold clerk work, out of the bound clerk task. Third, to be assigned with the checking cards whether the large number of the tracks of the 2-member clerks may be required to check the cars. Clerical duties are considerable among the railroads in different localities. During inbound clerical work, the initial numbers of all cars arriving from the yard must be entered in the car record book. The inbound clerk checks with the waybills against the completed track check. Make sure the number of the track check agrees with those of the waybills. They must also make sure that their car is for every waybill is, and vice versa. Many other reports are other necessary. They include arrival notices and local consignees hold-them notices, reweight reports, and necessary of the bulk load of the cars that have lost post part of their lading. The sealed reports of the yard stamp each way of the waybill on the back of the junction stamp showing the time and the date of the arrival, the name of the yard. Clerks are then able to check the interval of the cars and between various railroads. The notation of enable the yards to inquire the state of the corrective actions concerned with the subjected unreasonable layovers between point of the award and destination. Most yards maintain an inbound-outbound train sheet shows the engine number and conductor or name and arrival departure, the number of loads empties of each of the track and drag. The drag is generally a low, slow freight train handle the yard engine on the mainline track. The train sheet is usually maintained with a 000 100 to 2350 230 and 50 past the hour, 2350 past the hour. Here's a daily statement of the cars on hand. Example DA Form 5617. All right, 636, outbound clerk work. 636, when outbound train has been called, the cleric will assign the outbound duties computes the gross tonnage. The following forms help the clerical to accurately account for all the trains for the freight leaving the yard. 637, the train consists. The train consists prepared of the showing list that will make up the train. The report shall initial number that contains the weight, original destination of each of the car. Order from the front to the ear. The car stands in the train immediately on each of the dispatch train consists of a telephone teletype to the yard's train destination. No standardization prescribed. The train consists of 4 copies. The train consists of required distribution. Distribute consists as follows. Original sent of the set. Original is the sent to the records office for the posting and filing. A copy is given to the transportation movements over officer at a point of origin. A copy is kept at the yard master of the train of origin. The copy of the gate at the train of origin. The copy goes to the yard master of the train destination. Yard usually plan to have switching operation track allocation of the train consists also placed in permanent files for use of financial accounting. The 638 commercial free weight bill. A commercial free weight bill authorizes a common commercial carrier to move a railway car. Shipper prepares a way bill for commercial freight way bill shall also following the card number, initial contents, weight, consignor, consignee's original destination, date, and the issue number of the seals used, and if any special instruction information required for the movement, the information is used to trace the shipment. If stolen, it has been damaged while in the route. Similar to the system, it may be used overseas within the host nation railroad is used. The home routing card will be used attached inside the waybill while the car is to be returned to the original point. When normally be used a special type of the cars to handle the specialized cargo. 639 is transportation control movement document. When military standards for transportation movement procedures are prescribed, document must be according to the mill stamp. Directives of DoD Regulation 4500.32R Volume 2. The TCMD is used for the shipments from the military activities may be also a freeway build the number of any of these used sealed the user routing special instructions as inserted in the form. 640, a track check. The offset of the clerk ensures the information in the track check corresponds to the waybill of the train and the station order check. Clerk performance of the track check and must show the initial number of the continents typical of each of the car, boxer and hopper to the flat, and it also records the seal of the number of each of the car, the needles if it's necessary. Make the record of each of the seals. Used new seals are shown in the sample figure 467. Page 618 becomes the cars of empty. If the seals were required, additional information column would be added to the seal number recorded. The clerk indicates the top of each of the sheet is at the end of the train and the car was started. 641, the switch list can be prepared with the same format as the use of the train check column of the destination of the track added the clerk pressure, but the switching list using information of the train check and the switch list to present the designation of each of the car, whether an empty loaded at the track, which the car may be switched, number, the size of the cuts, and maybe in breaking up the train. Figure 568 and page 619 shows the track check converted in switchment and switch list and converted to a switch list. Yard switching crew. 642. A yard crew is generally composed of 4 members: an engineer, conductor, or 2 brakemen. The brakeman may also be called switchman. The brakeman workforce, brakeman working faster, rewarded that the engine is now known as a rear brakeman. The workload requires an additional brakeman may be assigned with a long lead of a large number of the switches existent with the extra brakeman or switch tender may also be assigned. The yard conductor may also switchman. Foreman is in complete charge of the crew responsible for carrying out the yard instructions in a safe, expeditious manner. Yard master usually delivers instruction in the writing of the verbal instruction. Complicated can be confusing. The conductor must fully inform his crew what to do and how to do it. The yard conductor normally uses the switch list. The switch list will be developed from the information obtained from the track check. This is a switch list sample. Sample format of the track for inbound. It shows the west end initial number, the loaded empty type and number of the car. Simple track list inbound. This is a switch list converted to switch list. Engine crew, 643. The engine crew consists of an engineer. The engineer works in the direction of the yard. The conductor and the engineer conductor are both responsible for the safe, efficient operation of the locomotive. The engine crew is responsible for certain duties of switching operations. These duties include the following: executing signals given to the ground crew, interpreting hand signals, refusing the air, any signals not full, clearly understood, calling the repeating of the hand signal, switch light, and collars the signal light aspects to each of the other ensuring signals is readily properly, ensuring the whistle signal of the mainline track is appropriate whistle signals of the yard engine. Flying timetable instruction crossing the mainline track is question signal when it may be used to obey. Periodically inspecting, lubricating the locomotive's runnings, inspection extras, and military railroad personnel of the car repair the platoon of the required railway equipment maintenance company as assigned to the yards as the inspector. Car inspectors examine the make running repairs of the cars entering the yard, and air inspectors test the air brake equipment for the training after they are built up and before the departure of the yard. All inspectors must be cautious while inspecting the inbounds, and chemical contamination may be present unknown to the tracking crew. Suspicious liquid concentrations should be tested, and all contaminated rolling stock may be marked using standard North Atlantic Treaty nuclear biological chemical markers. Car inspectors. One of the most important parts of the movement of the train is that the car inspector must make car each up to 200 possible defects. Inspectors are required to make a close inspection: wheel flanges, journals, bearings, frames, braking, rigging, handbrakes, air brake, grab irons, still steps, draft gears, and many other parts. If its defects are not noticed and corrected, serious consequences may result. A defective car in the train could cause a derailment or lengthy delay in setting of the car en route. Roof shelters and ladders, running boards, and unenclosed tops may be inspected experience, but personnel can be inspect a car in a shorter time. Air inspectors. Inspectors that are qualified in all phases of the inspection are frequently detailed the air inspectors in testing only. The train is coupled and moved to operation of the air hose on the first car over the connected to the ground air line. Inspectors couple the air gauges between these hoses, which make the length of the train, coupling the hoses between the cars as they progress, while the handles are coupled and ensure that the pressure is attached by the train line reservoirs, brakes, and applied by the on-train inspectors examine the piston travel to determine enough of the braking forces being exerted on the wheels of each of the car. Linkage may be needed to adjust so the brake shoes will exert the proper force. Every inspector for the excessively air leakage gauges are checked to determine the entire length of the leakage. If the leakage will permissible limits, the train is reported to the yard master as ready for movement. The car's inspection will write "shop" as a bad order tag for the defective cars that can be immediately repaired, and the cars that are to be cut out by the train yard master. Freight grouping and classification, 647. A governing principle throughout the grouping and block processing is group each cut by the designation so that the disposition outbound train requires a minimum of handling and setting it off. Classifying cars and assigning the particular designation, grouping, switching to the track having the same grouping. When enough accumulate on the same track, either one group or the combination of groups at the outbound train is ordered. The consisting tracks, groupings, blockings, and setting on the train in order they will be set off along the route. The first block is to be set immediately behind the engine and followed by the next setting off group in so place the block. Using all the blocks behind the locomotive involves the least amount of the movement and to be setting off. In special cases, there are more. They may be expensive. May be exceptions to the sequence. For example, a group of expedited cars may be carried to the engine at a location of their normal standing. The position will enable the yard master to receiving terminals to remove from the train car inspecting blue flag track on their arrival. When the car is simply placed on the head end of the departing train, again going out of the normal standing and handling identically next division terminal. The train cars must be kept in head end of the train, all trains, and they arrive for the destination. The method could save as much as 48 hours or over 800 millimeters haul. It may be equivalent to have set off either the end of the train in the yard, whether the engine is to be changed. 648. A bill rack is another method of keeping track of the waybills. However, there shows that should never be taken the precedence of entries of the journal. The railway contains a separate section of every track with the yard master of jurisdiction. Waybills are put in the section exact orders of the cars entering the standing on the tracks. When the crew switches the load cars in the yard switches the waybill to appropriate slots in the bill rack. When the cars are switched to the west end of the track, the bills are usually placed in the front of these on already particular slots. When cars are switched to the east end and the bills and are placed behind these are already into rack, they do not assume this because they do not assume that Do not assume that because the slot is empty, the track is clear. Too many people use it. Uh, Carefully switching bills and important switching of the cars. When bills are correctly switched, one may see the exact standing of the track. Makes it a simple matter to estimate compute the tonnage of any of the trackage when planning the outbound movement. The journal never bill rack. The journal, never the bill rack, is authority to determine clear tracks. A particular slot in the bill rack may be empty, but a mistake may have been made in the switching the bills. This is a bill rack. It shows the track lines and the shop tracks of each one of the numbers. So you see if you got empty cars, but that doesn't matter because it's a journal box. Sorry, a journal book. Rail structure and reconnaissance and construction rehabilitation.